Sorry. Okay, so now recording and now back. And okay, so the idea of how easy is to transfer this. So it would be easy or easy. Actually, it's a problem. It's I'll write just as in the book. Transferability. So how easy it is to transfer the thing that you think that is rare on this company to other companies. So the idea of the rarity can be understood through this. So you will take a look on this competence, on this resource or so, and you see, for example, if the person that is working with me is going to the concurrence and then they will work from there, are they able to take this idea or this thing or this resource, is even if it's intangible, if it's something that you know how to do, is it easy to take this from the company to the other company? So this can kind of help you to understand. Sorry, Curitiba is kind of weird by now. We are having this dry weather that is something that we don't have ever. It rains a lot in Curitiba, so it's hot and are hotter than it's usually to be, and we have a problem with water, so we are having no water here, so it's kind of okay. And then so the second point is the sustainability of this. So just sustainability. And the idea is, how long can you keep this? How expensive it will be to keep this? How long you think that you can have this in this organization, and that will make this rarity being kept. So the idea of the sustainability is important because rarity can be somehow temporary. And if it is temporary, you will probably lose this competence soon. But it doesn't mean because you will not have this forever that this will not make your competence important at this specific time. So the idea is, well, I cannot keep this forever, but for now I can keep and I will use this. So it makes my competence or my research rare or part of the VRIO, because I do have the possibility of sustain this for at least a small period of time. So the sustainability of the rare is important here. And then we have the idea of the core rigidity. And the idea here, okay, it's stopping. Yeah. It's the idea of how you can make this be seen as something important to the clients, to the stakeholders and stuff. So the idea on how you make this important and how you keep this rarity inside your company. So, but what is one of the most important things for the our part of the VRIO in here is this idea of transferability. So You need to keep sure or to be sure that it's not easy to transfer this to other companies. Otherwise, it's not so where as you should think. And at some point, how long you can keep this with you or inside your company in order to make this work better for you. So you have a little bit of the R there. And immutability, this is another thing that is very important to keep in mind, because it is something that for Barney and the guys that follow RBV and stuff, they try to understand those ideas, and these are very important. So you have this figure there in the 70 in the page 70, and then you have some points that you should consider when you're thinking about the immutability. So one of them, you have this figure in here, so probably it will be easier to understand using this, but I'll just write there in here in order to make us remember. So we have the idea of the complexity. We have the idea of the culture and the history, and this is very important for them. They understand that this is something that you should consider with some details, and the causal ambiguity. Causal ambiguity. And the idea in here for the complexity is that you have internal and external linkages. So if you were talking about how the other organizations, how the other players in the same industry can imitate those capabilities, those competencies that you have. So you have the idea of the internal and the external linkages. So how you need to connect with the other companies, with your suppliers, with the community and stuff to keep these capabilities. And the internal area is who do you need to keep inside your company, or what departments, what people, what resources you need to keep working together in order to make this resource or this capability so important that they cannot be imitable. So the idea in here is, well, it's not just about the resource, it's about how you make the linkage of this in order to make something important. So you have the resource, and they have some more items that will make the resource or the capability in this sense what it is. So the idea of the complexity here will consider this internal and external linkage. And then we go for the idea of the culture and history. And this is very important for them, because until here, people that were studying strategy, they were not really considering the idea of how long the company is in the sector, how long the company is working with that specific product, how long the company is innovating in some area. So the idea of the history and the culture that is around that company, and for sure around the resources and that those capabilities, were something that is like, well, this is not really important. So you just go there and you buy something and you hire someone that is very special, and then you have everything. So those guys from RBV were like, well, we need to consider that you have the idea of this path dependence. So in here we have taken for granted, and we have the path dependence. So path is like the way. So when you have a path, you have a way to walk through. And the idea of the path dependence is very connected with the idea of the history. So the idea is, well, you did not arrive here without a history that tells you a lot of things. And this history can be yours, and this history can be the history of the road, or the history of the sector, or the history of the industry where you were working, the history of the products that you are using to make your company profitable or whatever. The idea is, well, these were built somehow through the time, and there is a history connected to this. And more than this, if it's your history, if it's your company history, this is even more important to make this inimitability idea of the VRIO even more important, because this is something that it's not easy to copy, or it's kind of impossible to copy, because you have a history and you had a whole situation to create this, to build this, and you have people working together, and you have the situation, and you have all the idea of a history connected to the creation of that competence, or the organization of that competence to your company. So the idea of the path dependence is so important to RBV because of this, because it makes that competence, that research, that capability very important, because it has some history connected to this. So it's not just about being able to copy this for the other companies, because they can copy the product or the machine, or they can just hire the person that is doing what they are doing for you, for your company, but they cannot copy the history. And the history is important somehow. So if you think about for example, legal that we were working last week and the week before, is, well, you can't just copy the idea of the blocks. They are just plastic blocks with some specific design, and they need to match to each other, and that's it. It's not that complicated. But if you consider that they have some path dependence, they do have some history, and it makes something that is plastic more important, because they do have a history behind the idea of the product that is innovative, but it is something that it's kind of easy to copy the product. But the idea around this, the history around this, is not that easy to copy. And the other idea is something that we call, that is very cultural, that is taken for granted. And this is a concept that comes from sociology, and people that try to study cultures are very used with this concept, taken for granted. And it's a cultural area of the knowledge. The idea of the taken for granted is, there are norms, there are things that are so inside our minds that we don't think about them, but do not thinking about them do not mean that they are not important. So for example, we accept widely in the road that using clothes is something that you should do. So if you go outside your house, you should wear clothes. Nobody thinks in the morning, okay, should I wear some clothes today, or I just should go naked somewhere? Well, nobody stops and thinks about this. But this is something that is inside your mind, that is inside your behavior. And this is those things that we consider taken for granted. You don't need to think about this. You don't need to understand about this. You just do this. But do not thinking about this, or do not considering if it's right or wrong, or if you should do it, you just do this. And those are cultural patterns. Those are cultural things that you should consider when you are taking a look over the inimitability of a competence in your company, because you have cultural elements that probably are there, and people are not thinking about how or why they should do stuff, but they just do because it's something that is taken for granted. So that's the idea of the taken for granted. Do you understand this? Because this is a sociological component, and sometimes it's something that we are not really used to here. Let me read what you have here. Okay, Bruna, I'm sorry about this. I'm just reading it now. Okay, so Joe, it depends on the resource, for example, the money, and we don't have to brevet and the brand. Joe, about what specific question we were talking about? It's the rarability, the inimitability. Sorry, I didn't see this question before, so yes, it was like 10 minutes ago. Ooh, yes, we definitely had the bread. Yes, I can. No, just let me check, Joe, what he was asking about. Okay, so the rarity of this, if we have the brand or the money. Okay, but would you make this question again, Joe? I didn't understand. You mean how easy it is to transfer, for example, or the sustainability of this? My coffee is getting cold. I think he's writing, so I'll just wait a minute. For the money, I think it's not rare because, yeah, for sure, money is not rare at all, George. It's not rare. Well, it doesn't mean that you have we have money for everything that we want in the company. It doesn't mean that it's not something that um, we don't need inside the company. Of course, we just need some money, but it's not rare at all, not for the VRIO analysis, because as you say, money is something that you go to the bank and then you sell little more things, then you have some more profit and stuff. So money is not rare at all. The idea of rarity here are much more connected with those resources that are important for your company, but not just because they are important less money. Money is important for sure, but the idea is those resources that make your company unique, make your company special. So they are for sure somehow some kind of resources, but the combination of them is important. So of course you need to use some kind of money to buy stuff or to keep stuff or to buy or to pay the professionals and so on. But the idea in here is not that uh, that you should not have money. It's what kind of resources you should have or you should keep or you should invest in order to make your okay, I lost the connection with iPad. to keep your stuff as competences, as capabilities, as things that your rivals are not able to have. So of course money is not some of these things, because money, it's kind of easy to, it's just dollar, it's just euro. So I have $1,000, and the other company can go there and have the same $1,000. What is important is how you were using this, and how you were making other competences that will make some difference. So for example, for 3M, that is considered an innovative company, they have this competence of the innovation, and this is very important to them. This is very important to their business, being innovative. So this is the idea of the competence. So it's not having the money, but how you are using things that you have in order to have some kind of advantage. So for 3M, for example, the innovation. So if you are going to make the VRIO analysis of innovation, for example, for 3M, is it valuable? For sure it is valuable. Is it imitable? And then you were checking those points. If the guy that is working for me today goes and is hired for, I don't know, double the money, and he goes for other company, the guy that were working with me are able to reply or to make the same that we have here inside 3M in the second company he is going there. So that's the idea of the inimitability. So it's different from just having money. So money is not rare at all. Okay, so let me just be sure that we have the idea, if it's recording, because my iPad stopped it. Okay, where we are. Okay, and yeah. Let's go back. How do I think I need to go to Zoom first, and then sweetheart. Okay, let's see if it shows for you. Yeah. Okay, so we stop it here in take it for granted. That's the thing that I was asking for you if you didn't understand, because this is a sociological component. Just confirm to me that you understood this, and the idea of the path dependence. And then we go back to Ud, and she asks about the core rigidities. That is again here for the R, and we go up here for the core rigidities, right? I think it is. Okay, so the idea is how, because we are talking about how rare this thing is. Okay, so remember that we were the easy of transferability, the sustainability, and this core rigidities are inside rare. So we are trying to decide how rare it is to our company, to our business, this competence or these resources or whatever. So the core rigidity is how special this is that you don't have something very similar to this, and how you were trying to keep this special enough that is not something that people see, but it's not the same. It's just something, again, I have seen these before. So if you don't have this capability of having this as something special, that's why they call this core, because core comes from the idea of the heart that is very central of the company or of the things that we are considering. So for example, when we say what is your core business, is what's your principal business. So the idea is how central this competence is, and more than how you make sure that this is not something that is too much close to something that already exists. So it is like when you try to say that you have something very important. For example, you go to a store, and then you see two stuffs selling there, and you see something that is red, and you see something else that is reddish, and the seller tried to make you understand that this reddish one is much more important because it's a little bit more red. And if you take a good look on this, you say, well, this is not really different. This is not really rare. This is something that is a little different, but let's be honest, this is not something rare. This is not something special. This is not something that I have not seen before. Maybe I didn't see this specific red, but this is not something that I should consider as something special. So the idea of this core rigidity is something like this. Sometimes you think that you have something very special because it's a detail that you have this, but that detail is not enough to make this thing rare. So I was thinking about an example here. That's why I came with this weird example of the red thing. I was trying to think about something that you don't really see some special difference on this to make this considerable rare. Of course, when we are trying to understand the VRIO analysis, we are not really talking about one specific product as my example of the red thing, but I was trying to make some exercise to go outside the idea of the competence, because sometimes the idea of the competences, they are not tangible. So sometimes it's hard to make the analysis because you don't have the materiality. This is a hard word to say. So I was trying to think about something that we could imagine as a thing that we could see and you could touch. That's why I was thinking about the red product to make the idea of seeing something, understand something as smallerly or just different, but not enough to make this show up for the clients, for the company, and for the players or the stakeholders that you have there. So the idea of the core rigidities is it enough to be seen as rare? Is it enough to be considered as something that is central and make the essence of the difference or the wearability of this competence? That's the idea. Odd. Does it make a little clear for you? I need to drink this because it's getting cold. So good, so good. Okay, so let's go back in here. So the path dependence, okay. Okay, so are you okay with the idea of the taken for granted and the path dependence? I need to get used with this. I see. So part of you are here with the chat. Part of the stuff is here because I'm writing. The camera is there, and what you were seeing. Sorry. You there, guys? Path dependence taken for granted. Cool. Okay. Okay, so we go for the causal ambiguity. Let's go here. And then ambiguity is the idea of, again, how close it is for something that you already have. So where is the, I would like you to see this. I don't know how to share two screens at the same time. Yeah. Something happened. Something came down. I don't know. So the idea in here is, well, we're still talking about the inimitability, how the other companies that are playing in the sector, in the industry, are not able to imitate what we have, considering the competence is not necessarily the product that we have. So the idea of the ambiguity is how you can make sure that you have the contours of this, that you say this is the competence, this is the block of the competence, and they are not similar of something that you have close to this. So in here we are kind of saying again a little bit of this where analysis. Something is happening in my thread. I don't know, people are just fighting around. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. So the idea of the ambiguity is how you can be sure that this is one thing and that is a second thing. And they do have not characteristics that will make these things the same. And the linkage, oh, I need to write this for you, right? So here, with this. So are the linkages, and then you have the characteristics. Okay, right. I don't know, guys. I'll try to understand. So we have the ambiguity here. Ambiguity here. I don't know. A lot of people are coming to the street, and something is happening. So the idea is how ambiguous the characteristics can be, and the linkage for this can be. So the idea of the linkage in here is, let's see that you have this competence in here. Well, to have this competence, I have things that need to happen in order to make this. So I have people, I have the idea of the path dependence and stuff, but then I need everything connected in here to make this competence or this real capability. Okay, and then I have another thing in here that they just need the same. And the idea in here is, how different is this from this, because they are using the same linkage. So the idea of here is, how ambiguous those two competences are, or those two capabilities are, because they have the same linkage. So the idea of the ambiguity is connected with the O, or how the organization is making these competences work for them, how they are able to use the best of those competences. So the idea of the O from the VRIO is this one, that you are able to organize this in a way that you are using the best of those competences. So in here, we would have the idea of the O of the VRIO analysis. And of course, those linkages that we have in here, they can be at some point externals or internals for sure. The idea of the internal linkages are, we need to have two departments working together to keep this. We need 3 or I don't know, 4 people working for this. We need those machines working together in that specific time to be sure that we have this. We need to be sure that the CEO is working with the financial guys and the machine at the same time in order to have this. So those would be internal linkages. And if we talked about the external ones, we, in this idea here that I just wrote as E, so the external linkage, the idea would be, do I need to keep this specific supplier working with me in order to keep this, or this competence will work or be mine? It will be a competence just if I have the linkage with this specific supplier, or there's a specific situation that there is a rule, or there is a policy, or there is something that is external to my organization, and then I need this linkage to be, or this link to be connected, or this link to be kept in order to have this this external linkage on. And having this on, I have the idea of the competence, and then I am able to use this nicely to my company. So that's the idea of the external and the internal linkages for the VRIO analysis. So there we have some more stuff, or some more details in order to make the VRIO analysis, some more elements that maybe it will make our analysis easier to understand when we are trying to understand the VRIO analysis, or to understand our capabilities, or the company's capabilities. Sometimes they are not reading our capabilities, but the capabilities of the organizations. So yeah, I think it's the end of the page in here. So are you okay, the VRIO analysis in here? Because then I would like to go for the dynamic capabilities. That is also important to, yeah, okay. Okay, so now let's see how I just change, I guess. And then I would like to go back to PowerPoint. That will be, no, this one. No, it's not here. Okay, so the idea of the dynamic capabilities is, when we were talking about the RBV, people were very different from Porter and the other guys that were coming from before. I think it is Amandini, let's see. I think I uploaded this some while ago. Let me just check for you where it is, because it is some classes ago, I guess. Just checking it for you. I just show this for you, so when we find, you'll be able to see. As we are organizing inside dates sometimes, probably here, let's say. No, this is the VRIO analysis, maybe RBV, let's say. Results of your game, VRIO assignments, no. So May 5th, no, probably here. Yes, this one. Resources and capabilities, slides, fundamentals of strategy. And this will be these slides. Those ones. But they were like starting here. So we were talking about this before, talking about the research-based view, and we were talking a little bit about the VRIO and stuff. And then when you go, oh, we have here, the figure that I wanted to show to you that was in the book is this one. This one I was writing there, the things they are here. So casual ambiguity, cultural and history, and complexity. So you have it in here. So it is inside this slide that is research capabilities, and it the name inside Blackboard, it is April 27th and RBV, that's the class that you have in there. And then you have the resources inside of this. And it is, the name is Resources and Capabilities Slides, Fundamentals of Strategy. Is there. Okay. So yeah, we were talking about the resources-based view. And as you know, people, or especially Barney and the other guys that came later from this, they were like, we don't really need to just look outside the company, understand the sector, understand the industry, understand the other companies, understand what they are selling, what they are doing and stuff. And we should just go inside the organization, so our organization, and understand better what we have that are very special, that are very unique, and they are things that we do different. So yes, money is something that everybody can have. Products is something that pretty much everybody can have. So how we are having something that will make our products special, how we are taking advantage of things that are some kind of resources, but they are not necessarily material one. They can be things that you cannot touch, but they are resources somehow. For example, the knowledge, how we are using this as something that are very special in a way that will make us to have some kind of competitive advantage. So again, when we are talking about a strategy, it does not depend on the approach that you are having. We are always talking about some kind of performance, and we are talking about performance. It doesn't matter if we are using Porter, or if we are trying to understand the competences or whatever. We are trying to make the company have some kind of advantage. And this advantage is, of course, competitive advantage. So the idea is how to make sure that my company is better than the others, that my company sells better than the others, that my company have more profit than the others, that my company has a performance that is better from what we had last week or last month or last year or whatever. So we are always trying to have some kind of performance. And if we are talking about performance, the idea is how I'm using those resources that I have in my company in a way that they will make our company or my company or the company I am analyzing have this better development, this better position, or this better performance. And then they started saying, well, those resources can be the key, the answer for this. So let's take a good look on the resources that we have. Well, we have people, we have machinery, we have the plant, we have the way that we do stuff, we have some cultural elements, we have patents, we have the products, we have some specific suppliers, we have some kind of connection with those players that are around us. So we have those stakeholders somehow that we can use this. So we have a lot of things. The idea is, let's make like an X-ray over those resources, over those things that make my company what it is, in order to be sure what should I invest, because I understand they are very special and they make me perform better than the other companies, or perform easier than the other companies. What are those resources that are some kind of competences, that are some kind of capabilities, or they are things that make my company better, considering the idea of the performance. So that's why the VRIO analysis came into the play, in order to try to make the strategists to understand better what they have inside the company and how they should approach this, and more than it, how they should keep this, or how they should invest on this, and if they should keep a person looking at this, if they should keep buying those kind of stuff in order to make the resources kept inside the organization. So that's the whole idea of the RBV and the VRIO analysis. But then what happens is, they understand that you should have some kind of capabilities. So the capability is the way that you connect things, that you make things in order to have a better performance. So you have the resources and you have these capabilities. So those capabilities are the way that you were using, or that you were arranging your stuff in the company in order to make a better performance. And considering those capabilities, you can transform all this this situation that you have created in competences. Okay, so you have the connection with resources, competences, and capabilities, right? And then what comes later, people were like, things change. Sometimes I have some ideas, and sometimes things change. That were VRIO yesterday maybe is not VRIO tomorrow anymore. So what people start saying is that you should have some dynamic capabilities, so that the organization must have some capabilities, but those should be dynamic in order to answer fast for the changes that you have. So it's not just enough having those capabilities to make things work better, or to use better the resources, or to make sure that you have some kind of competences. You should have, or you should bring to your company, or to the culture of your elements inside your organization, the idea of being dynamic. So your capabilities cannot be the same forever, because the environment change, people change, the road change. So you should have some dynamic capabilities in order to change every time that you need, and more than it, to predict that you need to change, to predict that at some point what were inimitable, yeah, something that you should not, you could not, the other company could not imitate, or something that were rare, or something that were valuable, are not that much anymore. So the idea of the dynamic capabilities is, you should have the capabilities, but they should be dynamic. They should be able to change anytime, and they should be able to reconnect the resources and the ideas, and use better this idea of the path dependence and so on, in order to make this change fast if you need. That the idea of the dynamic capabilities. So people on RBV do not just talk about capabilities anymore. They talk about the idea of the dynamic capabilities, the idea that you just can change anytime the movement and the linkage and the way that you are using those resources in order to keep the advantage inside your organization, or the advantage in order to have a better performance. So that's the idea of the dynamic capabilities. That is something that you see a lot when we are talking about the RBV analysis. Okay, so again, we finished the idea of the elements of RBV. So the resource-based view, that we have the resources, and those resources are material or tangible, or intangible, things that you cannot touch. So for example, an example of a resource that you can touch that are material, there are tangible, or like machines, for example, and intangible things like knowledge, like the way of doing stuff. Okay, so you have the resources, and then you should consider, well, what kind of resources are important to my company in order to make my things more special than the other companies, because we know that all the companies have some kind of resources. So you have the idea of the capabilities. How I will make those resources make me performance better. So I have the capabilities to do this. So the capability is some kind of verb, is something that you are able to do with. So we have the resources and we have the capabilities in order to connect those resources in a way that will give us some kind of competitiveness. So again, we have this information in here on your slides if you want to check. So the idea of the resources and the idea of what can I do or how can I do it well. And then we have those capabilities that are just regular one, and we have distinctive capabilities that are something that are very special, that they are things that are very different from our company to other companies. And then we go for the VRIO analysis, because we will try to understand how special they are in order to make our advantage our company more take some kind of advantage over the others. So we went for the VRIO analysis, and then we have all these elements in order to understand. And we are finished with the idea. Let me see if I have some dynamic capabilities in here. I don't think so. Then we go for the idea of the dynamic capabilities. No. you know, why it's not here. Okay, anyway, we pretty much go for the idea of the VRIO analysis and we finish this. And then I would like to start to talk to you about the value chain, that is this part in here. And this comes especially from Porter. And Porter is the one that developed this idea of the chain value. So I would like to go for you with this idea of the chain value. Let me see, I have talked a lot by now, so I will take like 15 minutes or so, and then when we come back I talk to you about this chain value. Okay, the chain value. Okay guys, are you with me? I just stop the recording again. I would like to talk to you now about the value chain. And as I told you, this idea comes from Porter and not from RBV, essentially. But it comes into play here because Porter were trying to talk a little bit about the inside of the organization. And as you know, the main part of Porter development was the competitive advantage considering the industry and not necessarily what is internal for the organization. That's why when they started talking about this chain, the value chain, it comes here for the VRIO because they are later people took these two ideas of the value chain and the VRIO analysis and they tried to connect this. So what you have is Porter analysis of the industry, of scenario and stuff, the VRIO analysis or RBV analysis considering the internal areas of the organization, and this value chain will connect somehow a little bit of these internal areas with the external or this industry scenario. So let's see how it works. So when Porter talks a bit about this value chain, he says, well, there are activities inside the organization. Some of them are primary activities, and some of them are supportive activities. So he's trying to show how they connected. So here, this is a classic image of the value chain. And the idea is, so you have those primary activities and they are 5, and they have the support activities. So here down in this part of the image, you have the logistics, and they are inbound logistics. So people that are receiving some kind of material and stuff to do what you do inside the company. The operations, the outbound logistics, so how you were sending the stuff outside your company, marketing and sales for sure, and the service, how you put everything together considering the idea of the service. And then you have the support activities. So you have infrastructure, you have human resources department, or the way that you are managing the people inside the organization, the technology, and the procurement. And when you put everything working together, at some point you have some kind of costs for sure, and then because of your work you have the cost, and then you have some kind of profit because you were working on this. So you have the cost to produce that specific product, let's say $1, and then you sell for 2, and then you have the profit. And so you have the idea of the margins here. So how with how much you were working with your margin, how much money you were making from what you have inside the organization. So the basics of the value chain is considering the supported activities and the primary activities, right? And then the idea is, well, that's why this comes from Porter. You see that he was not really talking about what is inside. He was talking about what is inside, but that's where he stops. And then he says, well, what's important is that when you have the chain value, you have the value chain. I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes I change the order of the things because of the Portuguese, because in Portuguese would be cadeia de valores, so chain value. So in English would be value chain. I'm sorry. So you have the value chain of the organization here, but you have the value chain of each of the suppliers, and you have the value chain of the channels that are distributing your products, and you have the value chains of the customers. As you can see, it's not written in here, but as you can see, if you make an analysis in here, Porter is always making the analysis of huge companies that have some uh, distribution channels, and they have clients that are usually businesses. Because if you think about a customer like me and you, it wouldn't have any reason to make a value chain of ourselves. So as you can see here, when he talks about the customers, he's talking about businesses that are buying from this organization in here, and they are not buying directly, they are buying through channels of distribution. So it would work, for example, for let's think about I have worked some time ago for Unilever, and we had promoted Unilever paid for this, and we have promoted a trip. It was a business trip to Disney, and there at Disney they would go to the Disney University, and then they would win this prize because they were those amazing customers for Unilever. So that's why I am trying to use this as an example. So for example, you would have here Unilever, and they produce let's say soap, one of the products, soap. And in here we would have the suppliers for Unilever. Let's say that we have some chemical products in here, and then we have some kind of plastic industry here supplying Unilever. So you would have the suppliers here, and we would have, for example, Unilever here, and we would have those channels. And those guys that won the prize for Unilever were channels, because they were huge distributors for Brazil, and they would sell for the markets. So they would go to the industry and buy a lot of from them, and then they would distribute for smaller supermarkets, for example. So in here you would have, for example, some supermarkets that would be the customers. So as I'm telling you, the idea of the analysis from Porter, we're not considering small companies. Yes, you can, of course, make the analysis of a small company here, but for customers, if they are not businesses, it doesn't make sense to talk about value chain of a person. So of course, because if you go here, you see that you have marketing and sales and have operations, and it doesn't make sense to talk about operations and marketing and sales for a person. So that's why I am trying to make you understand that in this draw in here, in this analysis in here, we are talking about huge scenarios where you have businesses as customers. So the idea is You have the value chain of the organization, and then you have the value chain of the supplier, and the second supplier, and the third supplier, and you have the value chain of the channels that are distributing your products, for example, and you have the value chain of the customer. So you have this huge linkage of value chains. And this is important because you are trying to consider what you have best in this chain in order to make your performance better. So when you were making the analysis of this chain or of this whole position of value chains of the players that are in this sector, the idea is you are trying to connect what you have inside of your company with the inside of the other companies. So you have an idea of a panorama on what you have, and the generic activities. At least you understand the generic activities of each player inside the idea. So you identify at some point the situation that you have for your organization and the other organization. So for example, you can try to analyze the value chain of your supplier to understand what they have better, what they have problems, and you are trying to use the VRIO analysis to understand your situation. You can understand the other player's situation too, because if you go here, you have your value chain here, but of course those suppliers are not unique suppliers for you. They are supplying other organizations that are here in the sector playing against you. So you would have the ability to understand the whole scenario, considering all the industry, all the guys that are playing around with you, and all the players. You remember we talked about the 5 Ps when we were talking about Porter. So that's the idea. You are the five forces. Sorry. So you have the possibility of understand where you were taking your company or where you are playing with your company. So you would be able to use the VRIO analysis in order to understand the position, the competitive position, considering what you have that is special. So you remember that Porter wouldn't have this depth analysis inside the organization. So RBV are better on this, and they are considering the VRIO analysis for this. And of course, analyzing this linkage of value chain, you understand the costs and the price structure. You are able to understand what is going on, how the prices and money are flowing over this linkage. So you're trying to understand where you should take more control or try to have better negotiations in order to have the ability to administrate or to manage this somehow better. And identifying this profit pools. If you go here, sometimes you are analyzing this and you are trying to understand the price structure and the cost structure and stuff, and you somehow understand that the area that makes more money is this area, let's say the channel distribution, not the production. Guys, I hear my ring bell. Just a minute, give me like a second. Let me see what's going on downstairs. Sorry, I told you this is an odd day. Everything is happening in this street today. It's, yeah, let's go back. So the idea of the profit pool is, you look at this whole linkage of people and organization, everybody working, and then you have prices, costs, and stuff. And you say, for example, that you understood the profit pool is in here. So people are making more money here because they have a better structure, they have a, a better margin and whatever. So, for example, there is a classic study that car companies that have seen that would be better to rent cars. It would be more profitable renting cars or financing cars. Financing, I don't know how to say that, but like giving money to people to buy cars than producing cars. But the idea would be, okay, so let's take advantage of this and let's make our business part of this area. But what they have learned is, it doesn't mean that just because you are able to identify a profit pool that you would be able, or your organization would be able to make profit there, or to be a good performer there. Because sometimes you understand that there are a lot of money there, but you are not good enough to work in this place or to be profitable in an area that is not your area. So that's part of the VRIO analysis, because sometimes you see, wow, it would be great to be a bank, so I would give people some money to, and they would buy the car. So I will not produce the car anymore. I'll just give the money, and then I will make profit from the taxes they will pay for me later, because I gave them money. But what happens is, if you make a VRIO analysis, maybe you see that you were not competent enough to be a bank, but you were competent enough. You are competent enough to produce cars. So the idea of the profit pose is, yes, maybe you were able to see where the money is, but maybe you were not able to perform and to get part of this money for your company. And when you have this idea of the value chain analysis of the whole area, you are able to decide if you should make or buy it. You remember when we were talking about the forces and the analysis from Porter, that at some point we were talking about the backward integration and the forward integration, that people were trying to think if they should produce something that they were buying from suppliers before or not. So that's the idea. In here, you would say it would be better to produce this, or it would be better just buy it and leave the problems of the production with the supplier. Probably you remember that Disney analysis that we were talking about, how they were producing some of their vegetables and stuff inside Disney, because they were making their own products in order to use it instead of buying it from a supplier. And the idea of partnering, deciding who would be your partner, because it's not just about having suppliers or having clients, but having partners working with you. So it's a different relation. It's not a just relation of buying and selling, but it's a relation where you decide some strategic stuff and you make some kind of agreements of buying or selling with those guys. And another thing that is kind of important for this kind of analysis is identifying higher order strategic themes. So you look at this and you try to understand what is important or what are strategic things that you should consider, that you should use your force, or you should use your time, you should use your strategies in order to think about this. There is an example in here for a map that they were trying to make, making those analysis, and in here that you have higher order things in blue, so things that the organization should take more time in order to have a battery. My battery is almost over, guys. Let's just turn it on. Yeah, back. And in green, you have the idea of things that you should do. They are important, but they are supporting activities. They are not higher order themes, the strategic themes at least. Of course, that you can identify some cluster. Clusters are some kind of groupments, how organizations are working together. So for example, you could take in an analysis in here and understand that maybe those two suppliers are working together, or this block here of those two suppliers, the organization and this channel is a cluster and they work together. So you can see how they are partnering in part of this map. And you, of course, can map this, trying to understand better what is going on in this sector where you are playing. And, of course, bringing all the idea of the VRIO analysis for this. So, of course, you see the value chain and you try to understand the VRIO of your organization. So try to understand your competences, your capabilities of doing stuff. So again, remembering you have the resources. Some of those resources are very important, some are just resources. And then you have your capabilities. So thinking about the capabilities as verb, as a way of doing stuff, or how you were taking advantage of those resources, or how you are connecting those stuffs in your organization in order to make it better or more important. And then you would have your competences, and this competence will give you some kind of advantage. So that's the idea of the whole panorama in there. You would be able then to use the VRIO analysis in order to see what you have and to make a VRIO analysis of the chain, the whole linkage of the value chain, in order to understand what you should do. You should work with someone closer. You should keep this there, but you should think about a better supplier in order to have a better resource or something like this. So you would be able to make this analysis a little bit closer to the situation and a little bit more organized to understand what you have there. And then we have here two tools to understand better the scenario and stuff. This one is a node PAL from you. That's the SWOT analysis. This one you know how to do. And this would be interesting and important to you in order to understand the sector, the situation, the field, the other suppliers, the other organizations that are playing the same situation, and you would understand the industry, so you know how to do this. The other one that is in here is benchmarking. That is something very popular too, and it can be useful for you. The benchmark is basically look at the others and take a good look on what they are doing. So people do this all the time. We do this personally by the way. So for example, we can do a benchmark for someone else. So for example, a professor looking the other professor and take a look on what they are doing, how they are doing, how they are approaching and stuff. So the benchmark not necessarily is something that is industrial. It's not necessarily things from a company, but considering it as a tool to make these analysis of other companies, it would be something like this. You have basically two options. You look at the sector or the industry. As you remember, Porter would refer to the sector as industry, and you take a look on the organizations that are playing in this sector, and you are trying to understand how they are doing. So you see organization 1, they are doing like this. Organization 2, they are doing like this. Organization 3, they are looking like this. So you take a look, of course, on their performance, considering their profits and stuff, but how they are doing stuff. So it would be something like our game. You remember that you have the blue team, that would be the llama team, right? The llama team, the gray team, the orange team. So it would be, what's orange team doing, how they are selling the products, what kind of products they are selling, how much they are charging for each product, how long they are using their batteries and stuff. So you would take a good look on the industry and try to see what everybody is doing. For the approach of best in class benchmark, it would be a little bit different, because you would see what the best company in that sector is doing. So you would take this industry and say, this is the best company to see. So let's see, I don't really be sure about each sector, each industry, but let's say for computers. So you or phones, and you would go to take a look on Apple and say, well, they are the best, so they are the best in class. So I'll take a look on them and see everything they are doing. So I try to make a VRIO analysis of them. I'll try to understand the chain value of them, how they are making the logistics, how they are producing the products, how are the marketing and sales of them, how they are supporting all this stuff, who are their suppliers, who are their distributors, who are their clients. So how they are doing the same, how they're doing their business. And the idea of a benchmark is I take a look on what people are doing, or the other companies are doing, and then I try to replicate it inside my company. So that's why is coming just after the VRIO analysis, because the idea is, well, it doesn't mean that because you see what they are doing that you are capable of doing the same. That's why you should take a good idea on the VRIO analysis. And then we have the swatch analysis in here that you know how to do, and you could do this for the value chain analysis. You could use the SWOT analysis, and you totally know how to do this. It's easy to understand. And then I found the slide I wanted to show to you that time, that is the dynamic capabilities that you have already talked about. And then we have a little bit about innovation. I'll just talk it briefly with you, but the idea of the innovation is, yeah, should I have a new product? Should I use some kind of new knowledge in a product that I already have? Or how should I approach to use some kind of innovation? So what we know about innovation is that you can be the leader, so you can be the first to do something, and you can follow the others. If you are the leader, it's amazing in the side that you are the first. So people will look at you and say, wow, you are the first to do this. Like Apple have done with the touch screen. And the downside of being the first is that nobody have done this before, so you don't even know if it will work or if the customers will like it. It will be if it will have some kind of market, if you have suppliers enough to do what you were thinking about doing. So being the first is interesting at some point because you were the first, so it's like, wow, you were amazing, so you were the leader. The downside is, well, nobody have done it before, so yeah, it can be dangerous. And being the second or the others is you have information from the others, so you can look at the first and benchmark him and say, well, he have done this and he have done that, and well, this is a problem, this is good, and so on. So you just benchmark and do your best with this information. The downside is that you are not the first, so you will be recognized as the guy that is copying. So then it depends on your situation. So that's the idea of the market situation. So of course that you can have some kind of push for the technology. So you have some research and development inside your company, and you are putting money on people researching and developing technology and stuff in order to be the first or to be the one that will bring some new stuff. So, but it costs a lot. Having a department of research and development is really expensive. So you can have this, but you need to consider that it's kind of expensive somehow. And you have the idea of the market. So what is external, your clients are asking for those kind of innovations, so you can be driven by them. So expect what the market is saying, and then you try to innovate considering what the market is asking to be done. So that's the idea of the innovation. And of course, you can innovate your process and your product. So you can create a new product with new features and stuff, like your cell phones that you were producing to sell in the European and Asian market. Or you can organize your process, the way you were doing stuff inside your organization, or the way you were distributing stuff to your distributors, clients, and stuff. So pretty much the idea of the innovation. And finally, to point out, you have a closed, you can have the closed innovation, that you have your own resources, so you are considering what you have inside your organization, or an open innovation, so you are trying to bring stuff from outside, and at some point, of course, you can export your knowledge too in order to innovate the sector or the industry where you are playing. And then you have the idea of the innovation. So what we had today is finishing the VRIO analysis, trying to make it more compact, or trying to understand better the details of the VRIO analysis. And then we have talked a little bit of resources, competences, capabilities. Remember this, they are important. We have talked about the core competences, the idea of those competences that are very important to your company in order to make a better performance, have some kind of advantage. We have talked a little bit of the value chain that I told you came for the portrait analysis, but the idea is that you are trying to understand a little bit what you have inside your company, and for this you would use VRIO analysis too, the RBV approach would be important to this, and you would be able to use this value chain to understand the whole situation where you play as an organization. So you would be able to take a look on the supplier's value chain, you take a look on your client's value chain, and try to understand all this linkage in order to take some kind of advantage of these two and have some kind of better performance. So you would be able to understand if it's better to have some kind of partners, to have some kind of clusters, to understand the pool profits and where the money is flowing inside the organization. And then we talked a bit about two approach or two tools in order to make analysis of these fields and stuff, the SWOT analysis and the benchmark that we didn't know yet. So the benchmark, looking around and trying to see what they do best and trying to incorporate it to our organizations, and talk a little bit about innovation. So the basics of the innovation. So yeah, we had a lot of information today, right? So any doubt on this, guys? Yeah, there was a full class, right? Lots of information. Yeah? Oh, admin is okay with this. Okay, I don't know who is admin, but I know, no problem. Okay, so just stop the